you're not allowing probability to play out. You've actually got your ego so far involved in the market that you now know the exact days to trade, and you've disregarded everything else. Think about how arrogant that actually is to the market. And remember, things change. Once upon a time, this myth might have been true, but as it stands across multiple different strategies that I've personally tested, it's not relevant. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Falcon FX channel. Hope everyone's doing well. We're going to be talking about old myths of trading in this episode. Now, we get a lot of questions on a regular basis. Do you hold trades over the weekend? Do you trade when there's news about? All of these questions kind of float in, and it made me realize these are just old myths that were sold to you years ago. Now, there probably was a point in time in which that they were relevant, but things change, the market changes, things evolve, and it's important that you're going off of the current data and not living in this kind of caveman way of thinking and then still making your decisions based off of that. So I want to get into these myths, and we're going to start off with number one right now. So just a quick reminder, guys, if you're taking tons of value away from the channel, you've been enjoying our videos and you want to make sure that you are in the loop, make sure if you haven't already, you are subscribed to the channel, you like, you comment, you engage with us, and let us know your thoughts on these videos. We absolutely love doing them, and we want to make sure that you're in the loop. Speaking of value, we want to make sure, check the links in the description. We have tons of gems there that will improve your trading journey. So just a quick reminder to you guys. Now let's get back to the video. So we'll start off with the big one first. So myth number one, news. Should I trade when there's news announcements? Now, I know many of you will be going to Forex Factory and you'll be seeing all of these different news announcements and red flags, and then you'll be staying out of the markets constantly. And you're probably scratching your head sometimes when your overall analysis or predictions, they tend to play out, but you stay out of fear. And this is probably what you thought years ago. Now, there was a point in time in which that was very relevant, but things have changed and we've tested that with our own strategy. So I want to target NFP more specifically. First and foremost, we have to use our common sense. If there's Brexit, if there's major elections, things like this, you want to stay out because there's gapping involved, all of these type of things. If you was to follow every single news announcements, you'd be paralyzed from the market. You would never place a position out of fear. And you have to understand, a lot of the time, there's a quote that I created years ago, which is news creates volatility, not direction. That is essentially in line with that. What I personally noticed in my own trading very many years ago is that I used to trade NFP. As you can imagine, there was all these whipsaws that used to happen. Sometimes it actually worked out in my favor, and then sometimes it didn't. It's not a game that you really want to play. It's pretty risky, and a lot of people try and create their own strategy around it, but in all honesty, stay away from it. However, what I started to notice over a period of time is that started to change. There wasn't as many whipsaws. What you would normally find is, for example, pound dollar. You would see pound dollar move maybe 150 pips on NFP. And now at best you see a 50 pip candle. It's nothing too crazy. It's not like what it was. And I started to notice this common trend consistently throughout. Now, we've been doing this for over 5 years in Falcon now, that you can see that maybe 1 out of 10 that you may have got wicked out on something, but generally speaking, more often than not, it just commits to that structure. Now, not all the times all the way through, but even on the short term, to still be able to take a profit, it still commits in the short run. So it just goes to show you that if you're still making your decisions based off of just what you think, because that's what used to happen, the market evolves, things change. So make sure that you're making your decisions based off of actual data. Go ahead and test it, because with the way that you trade your own system, maybe that's not relevant to you, but if you trade structure, if you trade price action, you trade patterns, and you're looking at the trend, then more often than not, it actually commits to the overall higher time frame direction, and the lower time frame, this is just a little bit of noise, a bit of volatility. So something that you to look into, but again, don't take my word for it, go and test it, and you can literally see it month after month, year after year for yourself. Way too many traders are not taking trades, not just at NFP, random news announcements that don't really make that much big of an impact. And you have to understand, there's always going to be news announcements. So imagine that you live your life as a trader constantly around news announcements. You'll be consistently paralyzed by the market. You'll never make a decision. You'll never actually trade. And ask yourself this one big question, which normally gives people that aha moment. When you're trading your system, do you backtest every single news announcement that you're looking at on Forex Factory when you're trading in the markets? Many of you right now will be thinking, well, no, I don't do that. So if you don't cross-reference every single news announcement, all the little minor ones, right? If you don't do that, why do you do it in a live environment? How are you testing everything and trading in accordance to your system that has nothing to do with the news announcements when you're actually testing it, but then in a live environment, you're taking it into consideration? See how it's a little bit backwards? So make sure that you're congruent with the market and don't be so fearful of news. Have a broader understanding from it. So that's myth number one. So myth number 2, don't trade on a Monday. How many times have you heard this before? Don't trade on a Monday. This is where all the false moves will happen. Don't trade on a Monday. Things won't work out. There was a period of time in which that I even saw this in my own data, that Mondays weren't the greatest time to trade. However, things change. Sometimes there's going to be trades relevant a couple of hours after market open once the spreads calm down. So the problem with this is that if you've tested it and you can see literally, let's say for example, you look at a whole year of your trades and you generally found a discrepancy that 90% of the trades that you took on a Monday were all losses, well then you've got something to work with there. Maybe it's relevant to your system, but don't just make decisions based off of something that someone randomly said that may not even be relevant to how you're trading or relevant to your system. So it's important that you understand that. The second side of it is that it puts you in a bit of a fear-based mindset that you won't take a trade now on a Monday because you think that it's just not going to work out. And then that is almost like knowing each day or which day you're going to be successful on. How do you know that the trade that you take on a Tuesday is going to be a great trade? You don't know that. So when you start singling out these days, it can be very, very damaging, and then you won't actually trade accordingly. You'll start setting all these boundaries up that are no longer even relevant to you. So remember, if you've got this old myth that don't trade on a Monday, make sure it's relevant and you've actually tested it. Myth number 3, which follows on from myth number 2, don't trade on a Friday. How many of you will not trade on a Friday because you think for whatever reason that your trades won't work out and you just won't place trades? What I've actually found is the opposite side of things, that some of the bigger moves happen on a Friday. So we don't limit ourselves to which particular day that we're going to trade. If the trade is relevant, we take the trade. Now you might have cut-off times in which towards the end of the close of the week, you might not want to trade 4 or 5 hours before market open. Fair enough. However, don't limit yourself. If there's a trade on Friday morning and it meets your criteria, it meets the system, don't limit yourself, because otherwise you're putting yourself into this bracket of you're not going to trade on a Monday, right? Because you're myth number 2. Now you're not going to trade on a Friday. So you're telling me now you're only going to trade on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But what if those trades happen to be average positions that you do take? Monday occurs, great trade, you don't take it because you're still sucked into this old myth. Friday, same thing happens. You're not actually allowing sequence and probability to play out, which is the point I want to get across in this myth. You're not allowing probability to play out. You've actually got your ego so far involved in the market that you now know the exact days to trade and you've disregarded everything else. Think about how arrogant that actually is to the market. And remember, things change. Once upon a time, this myth might have been true. But as it stands across multiple different strategies that I've personally tested, it's not relevant. So take the shackles off, you can trade on a Friday. So moving on to myth number 4, which kind of follows on from myth number 3, which is don't hold your trades over the weekend. How many times have you heard this? How many of you out of fear close your positions on a Friday? It doesn't matter, even if it's good, even if you've got a longer term approach, out of this fear, because you've been told to not hold your trades over the weekend. Firstly, when would be a good time not to hold your trades over the weekend? Well, it'll go back to my original point, which is news. If there's elections happening over the weekend where there can be some huge gapping, then it would be relevant. So you have to use your own discernment to understand when and when to do something, which is why you can't keep every single part of what you do just solely robotic and mechanical. You have to use your common sense, right? You're trading in the financial arena here. You have to use your brain, use your mind to be able to make these decisions, and keep it simple. This is not complicated things. If there's going to be elections, there's probably going to be a lot of gapping. So do you want to hold your trades over the weekend during that weekend? Probably not. Close out of your positions, because then you're leaving yourself to slippage and all other kinds of risk. So just understanding that part. But generally speaking, you have the same fear that if you hold your trades over the weekend, then you might hit crazy slippage or this is going to happen. But if you tested it, how many times have you looked back over your last 6 months of trading on trades that you've closed out on a Friday and then Monday, nothing's happened? And if you would have stayed in those trades and didn't actually close them or was forced to close them, if it's a particular funding rules that you have, right? That trade actually went on to play out for maybe 15%, 16%. That's stunting your growth as well, because now you're forcing these things, again, based off of an old myth. There's nothing wrong with holding your trades over the weekend. There's certain times, like I mentioned, when just apply your common sense, it wouldn't be relevant and you're putting yourself into more risk. But generally speaking, holding your trades over weekend is fine. And every single time that you don't do that out of fear, you're almost creating this fear in your mind that you can't even hold trades. And then you often find the people that struggle with those longer term moves, they can't stay in a trade for more than like a day or 2 days or 3 days or a week, because you have conditioned yourself to constantly get out of your positions because you feel fearful every time that you're involved in the market, which is why you close early. And there's a deeper root psychologically as to why traders do that. And I've coached thousands of people now. You see these reoccurring patterns. And I know what it feels like because I used to be the same person. I used to close my trades early, let alone closing it before the weekend, right? So I understand exactly how you feel, but make sure you're not making your decisions based off of an old myth. So that is myth number 4. Myth number 5. This is the last and final myth that is arguably the most important. Don't trade in December. It's a quiet period. Do you know how many traders that still have these old myths and they're living by them? And then what are they doing? In the December period, they're switching off. They're relaxing, they're putting their feet up. They're not realizing that a lot of the times, actually the opposite, the same way that people think don't trade on a Friday. Some of our biggest trades happen on the Friday and some of our biggest months happen in December. Now, it's not just about this period of time in which to make lots of profit. It's not actually about that. It goes deeper than that. It's more about the momentum that you lose going into the new year. Because if you switch off, you're not sharp. You're thinking about the festive period. You're not following your routine. You basically drop the ball. The amount of people that I've seen have a terrible first quarter just because they took their eye off on the ball on December, I've lost count. So it's not just about making loads of money. It's not about that, because you might think, do you know what, I don't really care about making the extra percentage. I'd rather have the December period just to relax with my family. I'm going to be traveling more. That's all well and good. I enjoy the same thing. I love the festive period. I'm not 100 miles per hour, but what I don't do is I don't take my foot off the gas. I still prioritize the things that I need to do. I still keep up with my morning routine, my evening routine. Nothing of that changes because it's too risky to lose that momentum. How many of you have felt that when, let's say, you've taken a vacation before, and then when you come back, it takes you 2 weeks to actually really get back into the swing of things because you lose too much momentum. That's why I don't take holidays. When I go away and I travel, I'm still working because I love what I do. Maybe I'm not doing as much intensity as what I'm doing, but I'm still allowing myself to stay momentum. I've still got my foot on the gas in some kind of way. And as we're in Q4 now, as we come into the December period, I think it's really important to have front of mind. If you want to make sure that you gain that momentum and you keep it going ready for the new year, don't be living by this old myth where you think that no trades are happening, there's hardly any liquidity in the market. Yes, maybe around Boxing Day, Christmas Day, and New Year's Eve and things like that, and Christmas Eve, are those periods, yes, it tends to get a little bit slower before there, but leading up to it, there's still tons of momentum. And we've seen that historically, literally within Falcon over the last 5 years. We can go back every single year, some of the biggest months are in December. So we can see that in the data. And it goes back to my original point in this whole episode. Make sure that you're making your decisions based off of data. If businesses were still operating in nowadays, thinking about what people used to do 10 years ago, they'd be obsolete, right? They would go out of business. People that didn't evolve, that didn't adapt, think about things like blockbusters, right? Look at Netflix now. Think of Toys R Us, right? They didn't adapt to the online world. So you have to understand that if you're always living your life based off of what used to happen, you miss these small little details that could be holding you back. I noticed that because of my own obsession with looking at the data, looking at the charts. I love what I do, and I started to notice every single time on NFP, nothing was really happening. And then, on the first time, you might think it's just a one-off. Then the second time happened, then the third time. Before you know it, you're a year in and you've noticed a real change in behavior now. And then year 2, year 3, year 4, we're in year 5 now. So it's just about understanding when things change and not living by these old myths. It doesn't mean quickly change up what you're doing every single month, but take a look at the bigger picture. So hopefully this has given you things to think about, test for yourself, right? Like I said, it might not be relevant to your system, but do the testing. Don't just be operating in your trading career off of old ways of thinking and you've not evolved into the current times. Guys and girls, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for your love and support and coming to the channel. I've had a lot of feedback recently, which is really cool. The channel has had a lot of growth recently as well, which is awesome to see. You're tuning in on a regular basis. You're taking value from the content, which is really important. And what I love about that, we had the quiz recently. So to those of you that didn't see that video, make sure you go and do it. We created this trader personality quiz that is essentially highlighting all of the dark traits about your trading, so then you can then go and fix that, have the self-awareness to realize what might be holding you back as well. So again, we are consistently coming up with content that we believe is just going to help assist you on your trading journey, whether it be psychological, technical, mindset driven, all of these areas that you need to succeed, and hopefully you're taking some inspiration and motivation along the way as well. So thank you so much for tuning in on a regular basis. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, make sure you turn that notification bell on, and share these videos with your friends and traders that you think that benefit them as well. Guys, enjoy your weekend. I will catch you in the next one. Take care.